This video is for Greenville University's BUSN 201 Business Communication course, and this is Chapter 2, Part 1 about team and intercultural communication. So teams are successful when our team members can negotiate conflicts, we can provide regular constructive feedback, and when we use technology to help plan and complete team projects. The other topic in this particular chapter is intercultural communication, and this is an essential part of international businesses. Challenges of intercultural communication aren't just limited to language difference. There are other cultural variables, such as perceptions of context, time, and space, group or individualist orientation. All these things add to the complexity of working with people from other countries. And when communicating with people from other cultures, business professionals need to maintain formality, show respect, and write and speak clearly. Similarly, when communicating with diverse audiences, business professionals demonstrate respect through language choice about ethnicity, about gender, ability, age, and other variables. A diverse work environment brings great value to companies and creates more productive and inclusive workspaces. There are lots of studies that have been done that show the more diverse we are as a business, the better we perform. And that's because we bring more ideas to the table from the different backgrounds that are represented in our workspace. The four main topics in this team and intercultural communication chapter are team communication, collaborative writing, intercultural communication, and diversity and inclusion. So let's start off with team communication. Remember, communication is a collaborative process. In the business world, we're going to have to work with other people. We're going to be on teams. That's why you're in a group in this course. We have to learn how to work with other individuals. So first, let's talk about some variables of group communication. These are the three variables of group communication. The first is conflict. Conflict is something that we often try to avoid. We need to remember that we should focus on issues and not personalities when it comes to conflict. Okay? Sometimes we might not get along with someone just because of their personality, but we need to set that aside and focus on the actual issue at hand. Excuse me. The next variable is conformity. This means agreement to ideas, rules, or principles. This can sometimes result in something called groupthink, when people think too similarly. Okay? We don't want to just agree with an idea because the rest of the group agrees with it. If you have something different to say that you think is going to add value to what your group is discussing, then say it and add that value. And the final variable is consensus. Consensus represents group support for a decision. Even if some members have reservations, consensus is not required for every decision, okay, just very important ones. We can agree to move forward with something even if we have reservations about it, and agree to work on those reservations and how we would overcome them in the future. So let's talk about how conflict can be constructive. I want you to think about when you've experienced constructive conflict. How was this constructive conflict resolved? Well, some ways that conflict can be more constructive is it makes us more aware of problems. Okay? It encourages us to change and to make changes to what we're working on. Conflict also just makes life more interesting. It keeps it from being quite so dull. Conflict, again, increases the quality of our decision making. When someone disagrees with what we say, it makes us go back and look at what we're really trying to do again to make sure it's the best way. Conflict can help us understand ourselves better, where we're coming from better, because it makes us explain our point of view. Conflict also increases our self-confidence. When we're arguing our point, the only way we get better at that is through practice, right? So conflict can be constructive in that way. So one thing I want you to do when you meet with your teams this week, there's a couple things I want you to discuss, okay? There are 4 main things I want you to discuss. What if someone misses a deliverable or a team meeting? How should he or she notify the team, and what will the consequences be? What if someone needs help completing a task? How should he or she handle this request for help? What if 2 members are having a conflict? How should it be resolved? And then which decisions will be most important for your team? How should you make those decisions? Now let's talk for just a second about how to actually give some feedback, okay? First, be descriptive. Don't just say, you're late every single time on your part of the paper. It's the last 2 times you've not turned the part of your paper in on time. Be descriptive. Avoid labeling and exaggerating. Okay, we don't want to over exaggerate. Again, that's the saying, you do this every time, or you're late to every meeting. Are they really late to every meeting, or were they late 2 or 3 times and it just seems like they're late to every meeting? Speak for yourself. Never, ever, ever speak for the whole group unless the whole group has asked you to speak. Okay? Speak for yourself and use I statements. Okay? I feel like, I think that, not you're doing this. Okay? So use I statements. How do we effectively use I statements though? So we're going to describe the behavior without judgment or exaggeration. We're going to state the facts specifically. We're going to use I feel. We're going to tell how the behavior affects us. And then describe why we are affected and connect with facts and feelings. So we're going to listen to these 2 different prompts really quick.
When you talk about people who aren't here, I feel embarrassed for them, and I don't know what to say. It makes me uncomfortable to talk about people who can't defend themselves.
Okay, so a couple of things that they've done feedback-wise. They were descriptive. They spoke for themselves. They used those I statements. Let's go to this one.
When we spend 10 minutes talking about the weekend, I have a good time, but I get frustrated because we have so much work to do and I have to leave by 4 p.m.
Okay, again, descriptive, tells how they feel, doesn't speak for the whole group. Okay, so those are a couple ways we can effectively use I statements. Let's move on to collaborative writing. So you will have to write at some point, if not, well, you have to do it in this class, but not just in this class, at some point in the future, you're going to have to work on a paper together or a report together with another person. The first thing to do when we think about strategies for team writing, there are 5 different steps. So the first 3, we're going to identify the project requirements. What exactly is the project about? What are we being asked to do? How are we going to share information? What components do we need to complete this project, and which are the most important? We're going to create a project plan. We're going to divide out all the work fairly. We're not going to give any person a lesser amount of work or more amount of work. Right? We want to divide that out fairly and create a plan for how we're going to get everything done. When we begin writing, we want to draft that writing. So starting with an outline is always a great idea. And that outline can also help us figure out who's going to do what parts of the specific project. We're going to agree on a writing style. Are we writing this in the narrative style? Are we writing it in third person? Are we using bullet points? And some of that might come from the project requirements. And make sure we're sharing information. So using something like Google Docs where we can write together. We're going to revise the writing. After we've written our first draft, we're going to allow enough time for editing the draft. We want everyone to read through it. We want to be able to have time to send it through Grammarly and make sure our grammar and sentence structures are on point. We want to also make sure it has a single voice in the project. So while multiple people are writing this document, it needs to sound as though it's written by one person. And that doesn't mean that if you and I are in a group together, it sounds like it was written by me. That means it sounds like it was written by one single entity, us together. Have each team member again review the entire draft. Okay. Then we're going to finalize the project. We're going to have everyone proofread the final document to make sure one more time everything looks good. And then we're going to be very clear about how it's being delivered, who's turning it in. Does everyone need to turn it in? Does only one person need to turn it in? Who's going to email the instructor? So let's look at what a project plan could look like, a really simple one. Right? So we're going to write a business plan. We have who's going to do it, the task, and by when it should be done. So Madeline is going to create a wiki. She's going to draft an outline for the business plan. Griffin is going to draft the company overview section, so the mission and vision, etc. Beta is going to draft management policy profiles, and Madison is going to research local ice cream shops. And there are other things I'm sure that they're going to do, but they've started just a very simple project plan. You can do this in Excel. You can do this on a website like Monday.com or Airtable. There are you can do it on Google Spreadsheets. There are lots of ways to create a simple project plan that will help your group figure out what needs to be done and where everyone is in the project. And it's not about going, oh, Madeline is behind on what she's supposed to be doing. It's about going, hey, Madeline's behind. Maybe we need to help her out. Okay, so there's lots of things we can do to help each other when we use a project plan. When we are looking at something that someone else in our group has written, if we're going to comment on our peers' writing, we need to first read it for meaning. Look at what they're actually saying. Don't look at the grammar first. Look at what they're actually saying. Assume the role of someone who's reading it, not the role of the instructor. Okay? Point out things that you like and you dislike about each section. Make sure you use I language, not you need to make this clearer, but something like I was confused by what you said here. Make sure your comments are helpful, but don't go crazy. Emphasize the writer when giving positive feedback and the text when giving negative feedback. And avoid just taking over and rewriting the whole thing, because that's not helpful to anyone involved. All right, we're going to touch on intercultural communication and diversity and inclusion in the next video. Thank you for watching Chapter 2, Part 1 for our business communication course.